So I don't know anybody can see this live stream or not. I don't know if we're live, but I am going to start talking at 4 o'clock. And I am not hearing anybody from my Google Meet. So I don't know what the deal is. I'm going to do this. Hopefully I can hear you guys on my Google Meet. I can hear in my ear, and I am live here. We're 1 minute to go live. I'm not sure how this new technology is going to work today, but we'll give it a shot. Obviously, I'm not hearing anybody, so I don't know. This is really, really annoying. I know, but that doesn't help me. I don't know if people can hear me on the stream or not. The only one on the screen is you. I don't hear anybody else on the live Google Meet. And you, what do you see? Do you see what we are supposed to be seeing? What is very small? I can't hear you. All right. Okay, 4 o'clock it is. Time to boogie. So maybe I'll stop sharing this talk and then I'll come back. Maybe that'll solve problems out, and I will share the screen when I need to. Welcome to the session number 4 of the Great Education Continuum program for a lifetime of education in 52 weeks. We start each session with restating our goals, our purpose. Basically, which is we are all trying to do better at whatever it is that we do so that we can have a better life. What we do depends on the choices we make and the decisions we take. This depends on education, which is the knowledge and the skills to apply this knowledge in order to succeed. The better the education, the better our lives. Hence, great education, which is more than what you learn in the school. Great education is a total sum of what we learn through all aspects of our lives. So in the previous sessions, we discussed great education. We learned about freedom. We talked about a lot about wealth management, and we specifically talked about money, which is a measure of wealth. We talked about inflation, how money is constantly losing value, whether we like it or not. We talked about interest rates, and we talked about how we are losing money all the time without knowing it, through not just inflation, but through credit cards and bad transactions and owing money and so on and so forth. Then the following session, we talked about how to grow money, because in order to compete with all this inflation and all these losing operations, we need to be able to grow money. And we learned that we can grow money through lending, which is a different special way of saying that is through investments, basically, and transactions. We also learned about life management, which is change management. We talked about life. Specifically, we talked about the life process. And we said that the better we master this life process, the better we will master success. Now, that diagram we shared, it is more than just a few diagrams, pictures here and there. It really is a very, very powerful tool that we can use to help us really succeed. And we'll discuss that in greater details. Then we talked about learn three lessons. Anything ever learned is never lost. We talked about pay now or pay later. Later is so much more expensive. That's really a very important lesson. It's amazing how many people are in trouble because of not applying that lesson. And then we learned about keeping it simple. The simpler we are, the better we can manage it, the less likely to make errors, and we can manage things better. Then we parked a few questions that we have been talking about, which we'll touch on every now and again. One of them is that I had asked a long time ago: is God inside or outside? Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And why do I do what I do? Basically, kind of a big term questions. Um, while we are not busy getting wealthy, which is what seems to be the main purpose of a lot of people. So, in today's session, we're going to talk a little bit more about wealth management. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to get money. See, you can't lose money or increase money, grow money, if you don't have any to begin with. So we got to have some to begin with, and we got to find out how do we get that money in the first place. That's kind of important, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that. Then we're going to talk about more about the life process. We're going to dig deeper into it. We're going to talk about there are two ways to expand that, and we're going to look at one way of increasing it is by uh, the evolution of institutions, and we're going to talk specifically about institutions going rogue because we deal with them all the time, and institutions impact our daily lives in more ways than we can imagine. And then we're going to have a lesson number 4, and then we're going to question answers, and then we're going to go from there. So let's get it. Wealth management, how to get money. So let me share the screen with you, and so that it's easier to understand and follow. So let me know if you can see the screen so that I can get started. Can everybody see the screen? And yes, no, maybe everybody can see the screen. Okay, fantastic. So the question on the board is how to get money to have wealth, because wealth is basically how much money you got, basically how it designed. So start from the very beginning. When you are born, you have nothing. So the first way of getting money is what we call inheritance, and there are different forms of it. Inheritance is basically your parents paying for everything so you can grow and get to the point whereby you don't need to get money from them. But sometimes parents don't have enough when they can't do it. So there are other families who members who can help you, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and so on and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit more about it because it's kind of important. And then, if we don't have family, a lot of people, then there is foster care, adoption, and so on and so forth. So, I need to increase my screen because I can't see it very well. And then, if that doesn't work, we want to we can go through charities. I'm not suggesting that we do, but I'm just looking at all the different ways people get money. Charity and begging is one way of doing it. A lot of people in third world countries doing that. So that is initially when you're young and going getting older. These are the basic ways you can get money, and hopefully we don't have to go through some of the lower ones on the bracket. Now, later on, as we grow older and older, then we need more and more money, and this way of getting money is no longer possible. So we have other ways of getting money. One of them people often do, and we talked about it. We get it from the government, but that's very expensive. The government pays us money, child care, and foster parents get some money to help with everything else. But that's, as we have seen, is really really expensive because we already we talked about it. People in America, for example, already owe over $103,000 in debt before any of the other stuff. So that's when you live. Then you say, okay, this is not good. I got to do something about it. And maybe the other way of getting money is to borrow. People do that all the time. Student loans is one form of borrowing money to get to the point where you can get money. Not a very good way. That's why a lot of people in a big debt in college and stuff, especially in America. And but nobody lends you money unless you have a job, or except for education, when they think you're going to get a good job and pay them back, and still they're charging you interest. The only other way to get money from money, if you don't have a job or whatever, is through loan sharks. You know what a loan shark is? Loan shark are all those criminal people who lend you money at exorbitant rates and make sure you pay. And if you don't pay, they come and break your legs and whatever else until you pay them back. Not a smart way of getting money, but nevertheless is possible. Along the same line, criminal activities is also another way people make money. Neither of them advisable. Then, if not loan sharks, people always borrow money from credit cards. And we talked about that, how that's not a very smart thing to do. So, if none of these options are very good, and we are here, we get born, we go grow up, we got no choice. Time marches on. So, what do we do? Well, the most common and most useful way as you are getting older is through employment, to get a job. Now, usually, employment is what does that mean? It means you are basically selling yourself to help somebody else do something that they need in order for you to get money. So, what do you have to sell for yourself? Well, you have some God given talent, maybe, that people want, like singers and actors and sports people and so on and so forth. And if you have that, maybe you're lucky. And for a short period of time, when those things are in demand, you can make money. Okay? But not everybody has a God given talent. Very, very few of us. So, what else? Well, we can get some education, and we can help people learn, or we can use our education to provide knowledge to some other people which is worth to them, and they pay us. What else? Then we have training. That is the assets that we get. We learn training and how to do a particular job, get a skill so we can get money. Then what else? Experience. All of these things, the more of these things that we have, the more money we are likely to be able to make. And of course, ultimately, we can start our own business, self employment. What does that mean? That means we create something of value that the community, outside community world needs from us so that they will give us money. It really is that simple. It's a value proposition. If you have something to value that somebody needs, you're going to get money. Otherwise, it's kind of hard. So we got to go and find things to do that you can provide value for. Now, none of these things, jobs, or even talent, any of this stuff doesn't last forever. There's a short period of time for which you can keep doing these things and keep getting money. So, first of all, when you get some money, the smart thing is to invest it so that you can have money down the road, because sooner or later a time will come when you can no longer work. So either you can no longer work temporarily or you can no longer work permanently, which often is called retirement. So in order to do that, you need some insurance so that you can get money when you need it. There are different types of insurances. For example, you got unemployment benefits. Some countries have them, some don't. So if you have been working, you can, they take money out of your salary and all that. You can get an unemployment benefit and get some money. In addition to that, often a lot of countries have what they call social security, so that, and while you're working, you're contributing in there, so that later on when you retire, the government will looking after your money and will give you some money. It's kind of like a forced savings that the government help you save, and then when you are older, you can collect social security and at least have some way of getting money. Depending on how much money, how much you worked, how much you contributed to the system, will depend on how much money you get. Most of the developed countries have a good social security system. In addition to the social security, a lot of countries, most countries have pensions, whereby if you're working for the government or working for the military and so on and so forth, when you can no longer work, they pay you. Now some of those systems are rigged so that you get a lot more money than you are really entitled to than compared to other people. So that's another story. In addition to the pensions that the government or your employers can do, there is a thing called IRAs, primarily in America, but in other countries there are some of these money that basically it's like a private pension plan. You put money aside in some kind of a plan. The only value of difference between that and other investments is that with IRAs, you are not being taxed by the government. All right. Whereas with the other income investment, anytime you make money, the government wants to tax you. Where with IRAs, they don't tax you. So your money grows without being taxed until when you retire and you start taking money out, then the government starts taxing you on the money that you're taking out to live on. So like it being a salary for yourself. So in addition to that, you have insurance policies, which you buy, you pay for all kinds of purposes. Things go wrong, especially nowadays is pretty popular, called death policies, which mean if you drop dead, somebody will get paid a lot of money. And nowadays people need that, because so that there will be insurance to pay for your funeral on that, because a lot of people are not looking after their money well, so that when they drop dead, not only do they not have any money, but they are broke. They owe a lot of money. Well, if they owe a lot of money, nobody can go after them and get the money out of them. So whoever lends you the money, they're out of it, but they have no money to do anything else. and if maybe somebody will pay for the funeral and somebody will not a very good proposition. So we need to think about all this process so that we don't have to deal with this in a bad way. None of this happens if you are not getting any money. So you got to get some money, and then you have to look after it and make sure it grows so that you don't get into this bad situation. From time to time, we'll be talking about all of these things in greater detail, but for today, we are going to just touch upon a little bit on employment. So let's talk about kind of employment. At the same time, we are going to be able to use our life process and apply it to employment to see how that would work and how it can be very helpful for us. And that lead us into the second part. So, employment, how does that work? Well, so we agreed that one of the best ways of, I guess the best way is the best word to use it, is employment. In other words, if you want to get wealthy, your goal is to get a job. Now we have transferred a desire into a goal. And that goal, we can call it job search, or this process of trying to be successful in get achieving the goal of getting a job. We're going to call it job search. So how does that work? So our goal is to get a job. Well, sitting around doing nothing, hoping, playing ain't going to do it for you. So you got to do something. So what do you got to do? Well, you got to go and find out what is it that you have, the resources that you can apply in order to be able to get a job. And we talked about some of these things. And um, so here's a list of them that I cannot read very well because my screen is too small. Um, but basically, a lot of those things that we talked about, time is what you have. Everybody has time, right? Hopefully, so you can sell that time to people and get paid. Some people, when I said you, actually literally you can sell you, part of you. There are people who sell kidneys, people who have sell blood. I have sold blood a long time ago. God forbid that I one has to do it again, but that's one way of getting money. You can make blood, so people buy it and you sell blood. People have spare kidneys, so people sell kidneys. And not a very good proposition about humanity, but those are the facts of life. But that's not very normal. In addition to that, if you have some education, you can use that. If you have some training skills, you can sell that. Uh, Anything that is valuable to somebody else, usually to other institutions who will pay you for it. So, but just because you have those things doesn't guarantee you a job, because there are some real constraints that you have to overcome. You have to be employable, you have to be able to do well in interviews. There have to be some jobs that are available. Somebody is looking for a job that you have the skills to fit in. So there are some real constraints that you have to go get over. Then on top of that, there are some artificial constraints that have to be dealt with. Some people in the olden days, during the before emancipation or whatever else, people, if you were black, you can get a job in some places, that kind of stuff. So those are artificial constraints. Eventually they go away. But all of those things have to be overcome in order to be able to get a job. And we can talk more about this in greater detail. But you see how this process can help us be successful, uh, uh, rather than without it. So when you do some of those things, you are going to get some kind of a result. You're going to send 1,000 applications and this and that and the other. People are going to call you, and you get, maybe eventually you get a job offer. Well, when you get a job offer, you got to compare it with the goal of the getting the job. Well, that part is done, but is that job goal that you're getting, is it going to satisfy your desire for wealth? And there might be some other constraint that keep you from preventing to take that job. So if that doesn't do it, maybe you have some religious restrictions which don't allow you to do that job. We've talked about this. There are issues like this in France and all other places about wearing the hijab and not the hijab, and with some Sikh people, there is about, can you wear a turban, etc., etc. So all those are constraints that have to go into finally getting a job. So if you get a job and you are and it satisfies your desire, everything is hunky dory, well, you're successful and you can do the next thing. If you got enough money, then you can continue to work, or not, and retire. Or if it doesn't do the trick for you, then just like we said before, oops, you got to go back to the drawing board and go through this whole process again until you find this job. This is basically, in a nutshell, how the employment process works. Now, I use this example to talk about this education continuum, but this is what it is. So I don't want to specifically talk a lot more about the specifics of the job, like how to get a job interview, how to go find a job. And there are lots and lots of websites and things like that who tell you how to do it. But the idea is that all of those times you have to make the decisions, and this will hopefully, this process can help you make better, smarter decision, because there is always a better way. So that's about how to get a job, and not necessarily how to get a job, but how to get money. We'll look at those, some of those things here, and different people have different parts of that getting money process that they have to go through in order to be able to get money. The game is to get to the point whereby you are not depending on that stuff anytime that you want. Now, while we're on that topic, one of the things that I want to talk about, let me just go back. Maybe, can I go back to here? Escape. Let me just go back to the previous slide so that this one. Oopsie. Here. Can you see this slide? Okay. How do I? See here, inheritance, the first thing when you are born, okay, you already need money and you're dependent on your parents and so on and so forth. The lesson to be learned here as well for everybody is, right now we are probably just concerned about ourselves. But at some point or the other, we are going to have children. And when we have children, we need to think about this process for them to see how, as they grow older, how are they going to have money as they go down the road. Because believe it or not, as much as we love our children, bottom line, are a liability. What does that mean? That means that they cost you money. Again, I'm not making a judgment that is good or bad. I'm just stating a fact. Whether you like it or not, children cost you money, and you need to be able to aware of it before you start having children, to make sure that you're not going to create a mess for them, as we have seen that in America, before they're born, the poor kids are already $103,000. So The important thing is to beat the system on behalf of your children right from the get go, right here. And you need to think about this process for them. And as they're growing in time, when are they going to be able to um, get money and grow money and be successful and so on and so forth? Of course, you're going to give them education and experience and whatnot, right? But you need to think practical terms. So, for example, one of the things many years ago when we were starting off, my family, we I had made a rule: we are not going to have a children unless we own our own house. So first thing we had to do was make sure we had a house, because we know at least they will have a roof on their heads and so on and so forth. And while we're making money, we will do this. Second thing we did, the moment the kids were born and had a social security number, we created a trust fund for them. This is a kind of important thing to know, and all people don't understand that. And anybody can do that. What is a trust fund? It basically is an account that you open in your children's name, and you put money in there whenever you can, a little bit here and there. It's kind of like a savings money, but that money is invested. And the children, they cannot touch that account. They don't even know about it until a certain age. In our case, it was 30. So they couldn't touch that money unless they were 30, uh, except for either to get more education, like for master's program or whatever, or to buy a house. Other than that, that money was going to stay there. They can't touch it for any stupid reasons, and that money is going to grow. God forbid if something happened to any of us besides the insurance and this and that and the other, that they will always have money and it grows. The other thing was, as we were talking about parents, family, and so on and so forth, in that trust fund, anytime grandparents or uncles and aunties or anybody wanted to do something with the children, hey, don't do stupid stuff. Buy them toys and this and that other crap. You know, deposit money in their trust account. Okay, so that by the time they get to college and all that, knock on wood, they will not have any money. We did that for every single children of ours, knock on wood, and that way it took the pressure off of us. And so they're hunky dory and everybody is fine. They're educated and they can get their jobs and whatnot. My point is that you need to think about these things way ahead of time, so that we don't get into a bigger mess and it doesn't cost. Remember what we said before: pay now or pay later. Later is more expensive. Well, we paid then, and if we didn't pay then, now it would be so much more expensive. How much money we would need for them to go to college? They would have to get a loan, all that kind of stuff. Big mess. Pay now or pay later. Later is always more expensive. Anyway, so that's why this chart is very important, and we need to think about that. So I'm going to take a break, talk about quickly any questions anybody might have, and then we go on to the next item on the agenda, um, which is what our next step to the okay. So any questions, anything else while we take a break? I can stop sharing and questions. If I sharing, what happens? Yeah, we're learning here as well at the same time how to use this technology most effectively. Um, I don't know what happened to this machine here. Nobody had any questions? I don't hear anybody. Okay, we can talk about the second part of the thing here. So, say what? I hear something in my ear, but I don't know what it said. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again. Oh, yeah? Ah, are children an investment and a liability? It depends how you look at it. So let me go. Okay, I'm gonna put it in a second. Let me answer the question. Let me get my slide show share and all that. So there is a question on the live chat about question are children a asset or a liability? Okay, uh, the original idea when people were starting off, when we were early farmers and hunters and so on and so forth, at that time and during those times, the idea was that, hey, I'm a farmer, am I going to grow? So if I have more children, they're going to help me grow more land, make more farm, blah blah blah. Or if you're a hunter, you could do that. And that was a great idea. That's how the children were supposed to be a kind of a investment and a maybe even a social security system, right? But over a period of time, it's like, yeah, you invested all the money, the children will grow, and so on and so forth, right? Actually, during the time they're growing up, they are economically speaking. Okay, so that's another discussion we're going to have. How are we measuring investment or liability? I'm talking purely from a financial point of view. Financially, they are a liability, but they have all kinds of other benefits, which is why we have them. They're lovely, or blah blah blah, and that's more like an emotional thing. But strictly from a financial point of view, economically, initially they are a liability. Okay, when they grow older and all that, maybe they will make lots of money, like if some guy grows up and becomes a superstar in basketball and all that, and then goes and buys her mom a big house and so on and so forth, that's fine. But by and large, most of them are kind of liability. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that people shouldn't have any. They're great to have. My point is, if you're going to have them, make sure you can afford to have children, because you want to make sure that they're going to have a good life. No point having children and then having to give them up for adoption, like a lot of people do, and all kinds of issues that people have with children. So it's an emotional kind of a decision. I was speaking strictly financially speaking, liability, not an asset to begin with. I hope that answers the question, but that's that. Okay, so with that, let's continue with my. So I'm going to the screen. So, oh no, not that we already went through this screen. It's at this life process. So we looked at this, we said life process, that was like the secret of success to a lot of different ways, depending on how you look at it. I found it to be tremendously useful. I use it all the time. And because there are so many ways to apply it, and it has so many ways to grow, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. So have a quick look at it. This is an individual life process that we talked about. I have a desire. I turn it into a goal. I put into resources, real time, real constraints, artificial constraints, and basically we do some action, we get some result, blah blah blah. This is an individual basis. We do this every day to make sure it happens. If I have a job interview, that's part of my goal. I set up an alarm, blah, blah, blah. All that thing happened to make sure that wonderful thing happened. So these life processes are like within each one there are many of them. So for a higher level goal there are other lower level goals that you do, but each one follows this same process, and the result of one can become the goal of the other. So that can get complicated in what way, and each time for each one of these processes you have to do this and determine how does it fit in with the original desire. Okay, sometimes, like we have talked about, mentioned before, you can achieve a goal and turned out that goal, but it really didn't fulfill your desire. So it is better to be able to do that at a at different level. Now the beauty, the real beauty of, oops, I keep hitting enter here by mistake. How do I go back? um, the real beauty of this process is this, which is makes the human beings so much more, I wouldn't say intelligent, maybe it is, that we can do so much more than animals and other things in the universe. Why? Because we can do these processes in a simulation mode, right? So we, instead of actually doing the goal and comparing the result by actually doing the result, we can hypothesize and figure out what the result might be based on experiences and other things, simulation, and compare it to the goal, and then determine that, oh my God, that's what's going to be a stupid idea. So let's not do that, which saves us a lot of time and resources so we can do other things. That's why human beings can do so much more than animals and other things can do. Because of what I call this simulation process, we can simulate this life process again and again, even without spending too much energy and resources. Okay, oftentimes animals, people, they learn through what I call monkey see monkey do process, whereby they think of an idea, they try it and see if it works, and doesn't work, then they have to go back and do it again and do something else, and you have to preserve your resources. Not a very smart way of doing it. There is a technical fancy doodah name for this process. Is called trial and error, right? Or it's called guessing. We use that in math as well. That's a desperate situation. You only do that if you have no other choice. But there are smarter ways of doing it, to do this process in a simulation mode. And those are just fancy words. Basically, that's called thinking. Okay. Human being can think, we can do this process in our head and then decide how to make a certain decision, which is good for us or bad for us, and then go back and apply it. Having said that, the problem with that is that we have to be able to clearly identify these artificial constraints and real constraints in order to be able to make that smart decisions. If we have tons of artificial constraints that we are wasting resources on, we might end up with the wrong choices and wrong decisions, and not a cool thing to do. So even on an individual basis, there is a lot to think about. Now, also on an individual basis, see this box which says do action? It has a kind of a dotted square around it. And you notice that it has a Mobius strip in it. Okay. Now, that Mobius strip is a kind of a mathematical symbol, kind of like infinity, because it really is a paradox in the universe whereby, you know, you can be good and bad at the same time. Sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad, sometimes you're in, sometimes you're out, depending how you define the in and out. And if you follow this Mobius strip, you can see that you can go from inside to outside without breaking anything else. But if you have a normal either cylinder or a shape, or circular cylinder or a sphere, either you're in, you're out. But in the universe, it doesn't quite like that, which is the weird thing about the universe. You can be in and out. Same ways, you can be good and you can be bad. And we're going to talk a little bit about rogue institutions. So there is a lot to be discussed in that regard. But that is just on an individual basis. The thing that makes it more complicated is that we are human beings. We are not an island. If we were living just by ourselves, then that would be fine. So I'm going to call this process individual process. You see, it's got a little I at the bottom in a circle. It's the same process. It's an I. That means one life, me, somebody living their life, and that represents a human, one individual person. Okay. So, what happens? Uh, Something went wrong here. When you have a same life process with one person, that's an individual life process. I've redone it this time, but because in this case, I, the individual, is the resource for making this action happen. All right, everybody is doing their own thing. However, this slideshow was working fine before, and I sorry about that. No matter how much you do, it messes. I try to make these things kind of simple, but I guess and trying to animate them is a little tricky. Evolution of an institution. That's what we're talking about now. So here is the life process. Okay. Remember earlier on we looked at the individual life process. There was only one of us. But in real life, we are never alone. We got to start with maybe two people together. If we get married, you get a family, and now you have an institution, an organization. So, what is the definition of an organization? Remember, an individual was one person in a place around here using stuff, resources, real constraints, artificial, using stuff, resources to do something in order to get a result to achieve a goal. Now, oftentimes we are not alone. We do a bunch of people. So when you have a bunch of people in a place doing something, using stuff in the universe to achieve a goal, it creates an organization. Uh, Institution and organizations are basically same things, but institutions are very specific. What happened to my screen? But institutions are organizations which are set up for a very, very specific, well defined purpose to achieve a certain goal for the community. A whole bunch of people working together, using the resources to achieve a goal. Most common thing of that is like the armed forces. Okay, we have a goal, our desire to be secure so that nobody from outside could come and invade us and take over our properties and our money and beat up on our children, everything else, and basically so that we won't be oppressed. So we say, hey, we individually we can't do it, so we come together, we create an army, and said, okay, these guys, your job is to protect the country, and in return you're going to get all these privileges and blah blah blah. So that's the job of an institution. We create other institutions like education, schools, and this and that and the other to help the community. Yes. So when you have a bunch of people together doing something, using stuff to achieve a set goal, is called an institution. So we create lots of institutions because it is good for the community, right? It is beneficial for the community, and we have seen that it actually can be very helpful, right? I mean, I couldn't defend against myself against Putin or Ukraine cannot unless they did have an army. And even sometimes is that not enough and you need more resources, blah, blah, blah. But that's the purpose of the institutions. Unfortunately, a lot of these institutions and all that, they go what I call rogue. They lose sight of what their objective was and end up doing something not quite what they were supposed to do. So, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but for the purposes of our diagram and so on and so forth. So, here is an institution, you see, it's got a big I in it. That's a big I, that's a big institution. That little guy is a little institution, basic, most basic one, that is an individual, me, you, and all that. When we have a lot of these little I's working together to achieve a certain goal, we get a family, and then we expand that, we get a community, and we got different organizations, and then we got institutions. Okay, institutions are not cheap. We pay through our tax dollars and all that to do these institutions, and the purpose is they are supposed to be doing a certain objective, but it doesn't always happen quite like that. So we create these institutions like armed forces. So take, for example, countries like India and Pakistan, all right, or third world countries. We create these armies and we pay spend a lot of money and they take all the advantages and poor people in the streets are dying and so on and so forth. And these guys are having a wonderful time. A lot of these generals and so on and so forth, armies, they rake in all the money, they go and buy islands all over the world. And, well, was that your job? Your purpose was to protect the damn country and help it grow. Well, I mean, every 40, 50 years, you might just decide to have a war so you can become useful and say, oh, yeah, yeah, this is great. To me, I call those rogue institutions. Institutions like countries like Malaya, what do they call? What's a new name for it? It used to be called Malaya, not Malaya. Um, where the Rohingyas are. I forget the name. Where the Suchin woman was the president and all that. Now there, they use the armies to beat up on people. A lot of countries use those armies for the purposes for which they're not intended to be used. A lot of institutions go rogue. That's the nature of the beast. That's an important thing that we're going to talk about a lot. In America, what's really happening, which is scary as all hell, is a lot of our institutions have gone rogue. And we saw on January 26th the result of the whole Congress system, and the whole thing was going rogue. But fortunately, because the forefathers or whoever the guys who set up the Constitution of the United States, they were really, really smart people and realized, hey, the power can be very, very dangerous. So they put in all these checks and balances, which kept some people like Donald Trump for taking over the country. Unfortunately, a lot of those checks and balances don't exist in other countries. So there, these institutions go rogue, and few people constantly take benefit from the other smaller people. We're going to talk about rogue institutions because, in my view, rogue institutions are a huge, huge problem. And the most important piece of education that we can get is to be able to recognize these rogue institutions when they go rogue. The problem is most institutions aren't rogue to begin with. They're set up for a very good purpose, but then they go rogue, and voila, next thing you know, you have a mess on your hand. So we need to be talking about that. And America is going through a very, very, very critical, I suppose, period during its evolution and growth, to see, hey, if some of these rogue institutions are going to be able to uh, succeed and take over the power, or maybe the system has been built enough so that it can sustain these things that happen. Okay, and we'll talk more about that anyway, but the point is that that's a really, really important issue, subject to everything else. That's enough for as far as the more on this life cycle is concerned. We talk more about how to get money besides just a job and so on and so forth. Maybe talk about self-employment, um, different ways of looking at it. The idea is here, by the way, this education is not to tell you or anybody who is listening what to do. Uh-uh. That's not what the intent is. Everybody has to make their own decisions and choose what they think is best for them. The purpose of this education is to help them learn how to make the best decision given their circumstances, and how to prevent the guard against being manipulated by a lot of people, as is happening in America, to make the decisions which are not good for them, but what I mean is not good for the people but for the other guys. So that's the purpose of this education. Enough for that right now. The next thing we said we're going to talk about is a life lesson. And one of the life lessons which is useful is, I call it Nike, which is just do it. So that's the lesson number 4. Nike, just that do it. What does that mean? That means oftentimes we try to analyze, and I know in this some ways a tool like this can help you do that, which is not a good thing. Is over analyze. You do things so much. There's a thing called paralysis by analysis, that you go numb and you can't do anything else. The best thing there is, don't think, just do something and let it guide you, and something will happen. You cannot always predict and plan everything in the future. So here example from my own livelihood. There was a time, and I'm sure we all go through this time, a period in my life where I was going through a really tough time. I had kind of sold my company, just started something else, and whatever I started to do, something wasn't doing very well. The IT bubble burst, and we were having all kinds of things here, and I hadn't learned some of these lessons well. And cut a long story short, even though I didn't need one, I felt I had to have a job, because all this time I was a big shot. I had my own company. I was a CEO, president, blah blah blah, making a lot of money. And then I sold the company. Then I started another company and became a VP and all that stuff. Wonderful. Worked for a large corporation. Was a stupid idea. No matter how much money they make you, working for a corporation or somebody else is not something that is fun. Especially if you have been your own boss. So, cut a long story short, I was at a point where I thought I needed a really, really powerful job, and I wasn't doing anything else, and that was led to all kinds of depression, and I'm sure I became a real tough person to be around, and to be blunt, turn into a real asshole. And that led into family problems, divorce, and health problems, and so on and so forth. And it was really low point in my life. And all the time I'm trying to blame everybody else, stop thinking, don't do anything, blah blah blah. Finally, it was getting really bad, affecting my health. Later on, it actually led to a heart attack, but we won't worry about that right now. And so It was literally paralyzed, not thinking straight what to do. So somebody suggested, hey, go away somewhere, do something different, go visit family, friend, or something like that. So I decided to go to a friend of mine who I knew was a really, really nice guy and would always tell me the truth. So I went to talk to this guy and I was talking to him. And one night he was talking to him and he said, Joe, you know what? Just stop feeling sorry for yourself. You are just doing all the wrong things. The person I knew, this guy used to work for me a long time ago. He said the person I knew wasn't a kind of person who would sit there and feel sorry for myself, move around, not do anything else. Do something, and you will find a way. And somehow that. So I said okay, and he said, do something that you want to do, that you like to do, instead of whatever it is you think you're trying to do. And I don't know what it clicked. I picked up the phone, called somebody, and said, hey, I think I want to go back to teaching because that's what I used to do. And next thing I know, I got a job. I was out of the country. I left, even though I had a heart attack, survived that thanks to my brother and a few other family members and whatnot. And left the country, change, start new life, do something. I didn't know what the hell, do something. So I started teaching, and then I got a job, and then I said, oh, I got a job in Moscow. The best thing that happened to me. I had my life turned around. The point being, do something. As long as you're doing something, good things will happen to you, right? Not doing anything, just sitting around watching TV, getting moped up, that is really the bad way to go. So the moral of the story is Nike, do something, go play games, do something else, stay active, and most importantly, do not feel sorry for yourself. Just get up and Nike. That's the lesson for the day. It's 4:59. I am done for this session. So that's it. Any questions before I close out? While people are thinking of any questions, whatever else here, this is all about I am doing something. Maybe next time we will talk about a little bit about retirement and all that. But this is my doing something. I'm doing something. I'm doing these lessons. If they're helpful to some people, I hope they are. If they're not, that's fine. If they are, they're good, fantastic. We'll continue doing this for the whole year, like I promised. And then I hope they will be helpful to somebody. And if they are, fantastic. If they're not, we will tell me how to make it better. And if they're not helpful to somebody, well, that's cool. We will do something else. So if you think they're helpful to you and maybe helpful to other people, share them with other people, invite people to join, do the session. They can go back, read the blogs, maybe learn something, who knows, and we'll figure out a day. And finally, one last thought. Like I said in the very, very beginning, great education is about education and training. We're learning these skills, and we are also going to actually apply them and see if we can create an institution such that it doesn't go rogue and actually works for the community and actually helps them out. That's the last piece of this puzzle of great education. Okay. We won't talk about that until a little later on down the road, but we are just setting up the stuff and getting educated and learning about a rogue institution, about this and that and the other, about ourselves and our resources, so that we can come up with the best way for people to get money, to not to lose money, and to grow money and find ways to do things better and have a better life for themselves and their children, which is the name of the game. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll hang around for a few more questions. If not, I will see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Bye. No more questions.